Good morning. Welcome to the November 30th NBA betting show. We've got the gang all back together. Mike Lockey, welcome back from vacation. Mike is with us as usual now that he's back. When not cruising around the world, Mike keeps himself busy with livepokercoaching.com as well as stealing souls on the felt himself. Welcome back, Mike. With us, as always, Matt Mosselman. Keeps himself busy finding you value in games and also with DraftKings show The Slate with his own podcast, Studying the Sharps. With you just to kind of keep things moving, it's Mike G, and I keep myself busy writing exhilarating Excel macros. Let's jump right into the action. Talk about yesterday. There's interesting Mavs action and a little bit of Mavs value. Matt, what do you want to talk about as relates to that game?
So there's a simple thing from that game and then sort of a more complex thing that I'm curious what you guys think, and I'm sure people are going to have varying
I have a
opinions on
unique
this.
take on that team as well, but go
Okay.
ahead first.
Okay, so the weird thing I have to say is actually not about the team directly, so we can cover all of this because there are a lot of games today and there's a lot of injury news to look for, but as of now, we don't have a ton with a lot of value. So I imagine throughout the day stuff will open up, but for now, like recapping a bit, I think we have time for it. So the first thing on this game is I think it was a huge one for Luka's MVP case. Curry was number 4 before this game. Doncic was like tied for first or maybe just behind Giannis in the betting odds for MVP. And Luka's stat line, he went 41, 12, and 12, and the Mavs won the game on TNT, like national TV game. We haven't seen the number move much yet, but I think like the case against Luka for MVP has a lot to do with the Dallas record, and by the end of the season, that shouldn't really be a concern anymore. I think the team will be good enough that Luka won't get hit for them not being good enough. Because I think all the top teams in the West are going to win between like 43 and 52
Reminds me a
games.
lot of Jokic, right?
Sort of, because yeah, Jokic last year, Denver started slow, and the reason a lot of people were putting Embiid ahead of him at the time where it was like just the two of them in the race was because the Sixers were going for the 1 seed. But by the end of the year, I think Philly finished 1 game ahead of Denver. Like they were the 3 or 4 and Denver was like the 6 in their conference, but the records were basically the same. So it's too early to base the MVP discussion around team record with the exception of the outlier cases. Like the Celtics are well over 50% to have the best record in the NBA. So for Tatum, I think that is pretty solidified. But for other teams like Golden State and Dallas, who are both 500, by the end of the year, we'll see those teams 10 games over 500 probably, and that won't matter anymore. The fact that their teams are off to a slow start. So I think Luka is the rightful favorite right now, but I think it still is really close between him and Giannis and Tatum. But this was a hit for Curry because I think the Warriors have higher expectations for what their team record should be coming off the championship. And for Steph to win regular season MVP, I think they'd have to be a top 3 or 4 seed in the Western Conference. So finishing behind Dallas in the standings certainly wouldn't help them.
Is there a number that if it's X, you're betting more on Luka? I assume you already have a little something sprinkled there already. So for you to make another bet, what's the price you're looking at where you would make an additional bet on Luka?
I think 3-1 or higher.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Luka's probability is, I think, approaching 30%. I think Tatum and Giannis are in the 20s, something like that.
All right. Anything to the? I know. I think it's gonna be tougher for Giannis since he's already won a couple. Anything to the Tatum getting a little extra bump because he hasn't had one?
I think that's
obviously Luka as well, but I think if Boston ends up 10 wins higher, 10 wins more than Dallas, don't you think isn't Tatum the favorite at that point? If they continue at their same pace, or is Luka's season just so ridiculous that as long as they're above 500, he's going to get it?
Well, I think that's
so much better than Tatum's, right? Like consistently, it is.
Yeah.
Luka is triple doubling on a insane basis. He's the entire offense, more or less. So
he's the whole team.
On one hand, like I agree, Tatum's great, and like we were early on how great Tatum is, Matt more so than either of us. And
it's just the ratings. It's not me. It's just what the ratings say.
reading the tea leaves is a skill that you have, and that's totally fine. So yeah, I mean, Luka's stats are going to be astronomical compared to Tatum's. Like, how big of a difference are their daily PRAs? They're probably 15 apart, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that stuff for Tatum with him getting a bump because it's like he's kind of the guy the media is rooting for. I think that's already factoring into what I think the probabilities are. Like Tatum is not as good as Luka or Giannis or even Jokic. Tatum's probably the fifth or sixth best player in the NBA. Steph is probably better than him too. So the reason Tatum is so squarely in the MVP race is partly because of Boston, like what their record is as a team, and also because I think there's a story there that where like he feels like the guy this year that the league wants to give it to, that the writers want to give it to.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a bump for best guy on the best team, even if he's not the best overall. Best guy on the best team is going to get some bump. And while I agree there's a lot of groundswell support for Luka, I think at some point, especially if they're not winning, if they're just hovering around 500 all year, there's going to be some backlash to that astronomical usage rate. Yeah, yes, Luka's PRA is higher day to day, but he's also at a usage rate that is like it puts Westbrook's MVP year to shame in terms of how much he has control over everything. So his PRA has to be high. Now it's an incredible season, but anyway, this is a fun one to watch. This is a real fun one to watch.
Yeah, these guys are all playing great. So yeah, I mean, to summarize it, I'm happy we took Tatum at plus 700 like 2 weeks ago. That was like one of our first shows where we talked about that because there was I don't remember if there was a national TV game then, but yeah, Tatum's odds have moved quite a bit.
We were going into a national TV game where you said if he has a big game, it's probably going to drop from 700 to plus 3 something.
Yeah,
and there's been that drop.
Yeah, the odds Mike, basically have these guys tied.
Yep. Mike, I know you said you had something else in mind about the Dallas game. Was it this MVP discussion, or was there something else related to that game?
Okay, so here's a thought that I had. They recently signed Kemba Walker, somebody who I would imagine is going to rate quite poorly in the ratings overall. And if I had to guess, he's probably like an unknown rating in offense and like a pretty poor rating in defense is my assumption. Now, that could be way off. Please correct me if that.
He's rated actually quite well, surprisingly, but there were issues with this last year because he was so good for parts of the season and so bad for other parts of the season. Like, he was the Knicks' best player for like 2 months, or maybe it was less than that. And then there were other parts of the year where he wasn't even in the rotation. So if you're saying there's a lot of variance here, yeah, I would agree with that probably. I don't know what he's going to be.
So my thought is, one of the things that I was wondering is, does that affect maybe like a Mavs team total at all? Is like it just feels like as a team they've made the decision we need more firepower, or and maybe I'm reading way too much into this, but it just feels like to me, I would expect a little bit of an uptick in offensive production, just in like as a like coaching strategy thing. And I don't know if there's anything actionable on that, but I was curious if that's just a thought.
I think you're probably right, and it probably won't be very actionable because I think, well, yeah, it probably won't be priced in to any real extent. It might be actionable for the first game or two, but we're also, in those first few games, Kemba's probably not playing many minutes. Like, once he gets on the court, they're going to have to ramp him up slowly. He hasn't been in NBA games for a while, so we might miss the boat because by the time they adjust for him,
the markets will adjust along.
The markets will have adjusted by the time he's playing normal minutes. Like if he may play 8 minutes a game to start in his first 2 weeks. So, but if we get him playing 20 plus minutes, like the game should be higher scoring because he's not good at defense, and I think he probably is still good at offense. We don't know. We'll have to see him. But...
I was leaving an unknown there because I could make an argument for being negative. I could make an argument for being neutral. Right. I could make an argument for being positive.
Yeah, we need to see what version of Kemba we're getting.
It's worth keeping an eye on, though.
Yeah, and I mean, he's going to get open looks because with Luke on the floor, he just draws so much attention, and so many teams blitz him.
I feel like he's not a big 3-point shooter. Is that something I'm misremembering?
I think he shoots some, but not a crazy amount.
Yeah, so I do think it's an interesting point, especially as we're just talking about this Luka usage rate, because I think the team, the ownership, the coaching recognize they don't know. I don't think they want to keep him at this kind of usage rate and then expect him to be what he's been in the playoffs in the past. So they're just trying to bring somebody else that he can reliably pass to, who will be able to put the ball in the bucket. So they definitely need help there on offense. All right. Anything else from that Dallas game?
Yeah. There's this one other thing that I want to talk about from it before we get to today. So the line movement for this game was really interesting, and it was to the point where right before tip-off, I had like 15 bets queued up that I was maybe going to make because I was starting to worry that Steph Curry wasn't going to be playing last night. The line was moving that aggressively, so Dallas was plus 1.5 to plus 2 all day. And the public was on the Warriors, I mean, at least according to the Action Network's betting splits. But we had talked about it during the show. Like, the Warriors are going to be the popular bet in just about every game they play. And Dallas is under 500. And I think, most people were probably betting on Golden State, like the casual fans, even as small favorites. And then right before tip-off, like maybe 25 minutes before tip-off, we still didn't have a Warriors starting lineup, and the Mavs had moved to -1. And I was looking at it like, is something about to happen? Like the starting lineup was delayed, and the betting line had moved 2.5 points. So I queued up a bunch of like Warriors team total under, Mavericks money line, game total under, Jordan Poole props. I was like, maybe there's something wrong with Steph, because I don't think there's another player on the team that would have an impact like that. Maybe Steph didn't look good during warmups, or he looked sick, or he wasn't going to play well, or I was just in case there was an update. Like, I had no idea what was going on. So there's this idea where people will chase the steam, like they will see that the Mavs moved from +2 to -1, and then make a bet solely because of that. I definitely don't suggest using that as a way to just blindly bet something, but I think ignoring the market move is
Sometimes the market knows more than you do.
Sometimes the market knows more than you do, and in this case, it kind of seemed like it in the first quarter. So, but before the game, I didn't know anything yet. So I basically am just using the market move as a tell that something might be going on. Like, it's a trigger for me to pay attention if the line is starting to move aggressively.
Very well said. It is a very solid analysis, and I pretty much, I wasn't sweating that personally, but I think that is a great recap of what could have been, and that could have been anything, right? It could have been a comment Steph made on the court or something, or like you said, he could have like tripped, or like maybe like almost rolled an ankle, but not really,
right?
Or like any like little thing like that,
or he went to the locker room to go to the bathroom during the warm-up.
Something like that. You're right.
Yeah, like it could have been that, but I actually think what it was is Steph came out for the first quarter wearing a brace on his left knee. I didn't notice it for the first few minutes of the game, but he also, like, he was kind of grimacing a bit. I actually think what probably happened there is people watched Steph warm up and he didn't look right. He ended up playing anyway, so I didn't bet anything. Like, I wasn't going to just guess on that he's going to be off tonight. But the Warriors scored 6 points in the first 8 minutes of the game, and Kevon Looney had all 6 of the points.
I was going to say, I was watching that. They were down 23-6, and it was a Looney show.
Yeah, like they couldn't do anything. And I think there was probably something physically wrong with Steph Curry last night, where maybe he just had some tightness, and then by the second quarter, he like worked through it. He finished the game with 32. So I think there was something going on with Curry that affected his first quarter performance. I think it was pretty obvious watching it, right? Like when do you ever see that where Kevon Looney is the only player on the Warriors scoring points when they're healthy?
Right.
That was such a weird situation.
Good. This is one where if you're seeing the market move, doesn't mean that you make the bet, but certainly be ready.
Yeah, like get your tweet notifications on if you see lines starting to move, or get your logins ready, or like get on the sports book, because a lot of the time the actual reporting will lag behind the real information, especially when it's a very weird kind of update. So yeah, if you see lines moving aggressively, just log in, get your notifications, get your phone out. Like that's usually how I treat that kind of thing.
Sounds good. All right, one more thing before we move to today, because there is a potentially actionable bet to be made. We talked yesterday about the Blazers not make playoff odds, especially if they lost last night. So they did lose last night. Odds are plus 140 on Bet Rivers. Matt, I know you already have a bet, but for those who don't have anything yet on Blazers to miss playoffs, are we suggesting right now go get something in at the plus 140?
Yeah, I think I'm again just after last night's game, I bet as much more as, there's limits, so it makes it hard to like pick and choose exactly how much you want to bet on things. But the Blazers projected wins for the season on 538. It was at 40 before last night. Now it's at 39. This did get a little complicated because Chauncey Billups said yesterday before the game that Damian Lillard was still like unknown when he was going to come back, and then after the game they said he was going to be back on Sunday. So they I don't. They may be getting a boost sooner than we were expecting.
All right, so let's plant a flag. Are we suggesting? Are we, for those that don't have a bet on the Blazers?
Yeah, I still say yes. I still say yes. Like Blazers plus money plus anything to miss the playoffs, I think is still good.
I'm going to double down on that, and the reason I'm going to double down on that is the very last time I checked the record, they were number 1 overall in the Western Conference, and that really shocked me. I think that was live on air. Now I just double checked it. They're 11-10. They're 7th in the West. Like, yeah, this is a sinking ship. I think it's I plus 140 seems awesome to me.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think the breakdown we did of Sacramento last week before they played the Celtics about how a team that doesn't have the underlying talent can get figured out, as opposed to a team that just has so much talent they can just start doing a different thing. I think Portland, we never really put them in that category, but I think they are squarely in that category even when Dame plays. So the problem there is Lillard is really good, and they've got some other pretty good starters like Hart and Grant are fine, and Nurkic is good. Simons might be good. Like, it's still early in his career. He's very inconsistent still. Clearly his usage goes way up without Lillard, but as far as like a compliment to Lillard, I think he's fine. I mean, I think he's an okay player. But Portland has a terrible bench. They don't have like any other good players after their starting lineup. And it's just not a good team overall, like player by player. And they've done a lot of gimmicky things. Like they're playing a 2-3 zone half the possessions. And they're just they're a team that I would have guessed if we had really talked about this could get scouted and figured out to more of a degree than what happened. Like their wins early were a bit gimmicky. Like they're playing a weird way that I don't think can be sustainable.
I got a real thought here, and it's this actually applies more to football. Or I guess football is where I originally got this concept. I'm going to bring it back to the Miami Dolphins running the Wildcat.
Sure, yeah.
The perfect example for me. When you bring a new thing to the table, it is likely going to be extremely successful, and it's going to you're going to confuse a bunch of linebackers. You're going to do a bunch of things, and it only took about a full season for that to basically not be in play anymore. So there's a general strategy that coaches and players bring, and then there's incentive to be different and create new strategies and winning strategies. But the opponents get to study what you're doing differently, and eventually that gets figured out. So absolutely agree with you. Blazers running hot, possibly shooting well, none of that stuff is going to necessarily apply going forward. And, some of these teams like the Kings and whatnot, like if you're doing, actually the Jazz might even be the best example of this, right? We watched that tape on the Jazz. They're doing a lot of unique stuff with marketing. How sustainable is that?
It wasn't,
everyone's watching the tape on all of that stuff, right? So, overcorrecting is kind of just a part of professional sports. The other team is trying to prevent you from doing what you're doing successfully.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line for this is that the teams will eventually regress towards the quality of the players. Like sometimes schemes can win out over other schemes, and sometimes coaching is just so good that even in the long run, the team that is just smarter will be able to sustain a different level of production than you would guess from their underlying talent. But teams will tend to regress towards their underlying talent. And I think that is happening with Utah and Sacramento and Portland. And I'm glad you brought up Utah too, because these teams are, for this reason, all in the same category. The difference is that at no point was Utah minus 250 to make the playoffs. Like Utah just had different odds than those teams. The Kings were never favored to make the playoffs either, but before the season, the Blazers were something like pick 'em to make the playoffs. The Kings were like plus 2 or 300 to get into the playoffs. And the Jazz were like 20-1 or 30-1 to get in the playoffs. So even though, yes, Utah overachieved for their first 18 games, and now we're kind of seeing them go back to normal. Part of that is Mike Conley, but part of it is just like they were running a system that other teams were not used to defending. Like everyone can dribble, like space the court. They're going to look for their threes, and I think teams are catching on a bit. And the overall talent for Utah it's okay. Like it's not bad, but it's not great either. So the difference there is just that the odds on Utah before the season were just insane. And the odds on Portland and Sacramento were fair. So that's why we were so excited about Utah. But Utah, Portland, and Sacramento are all very similar to each other in that way and kind of in every way.
Okay, so sounds good. So it sounds like there is still some value left. Some meat on the bone for Portland to miss the playoffs at one plus 140. So if you can get that, go ahead and grab it.
And then a quick note to pivot to tonight with Portland is they are playing the Lakers, which is a game we'll talk about for sure. But it's not out of the question that the Lakers could finish the season with a better record than the Blazers, especially if the Lakers are able to make a trade. Like the Blazers could wind up winning 37 games this year and the Lakers win 38. Like that's not, that's not a 1% outcome. That could be a 10% outcome. The Blazers are playing the Lakers tonight. And if the Lakers beat them, the Blazers are only 2 games ahead at that point. So it is like a pretty significant game for playoff implications. And then Portland has another game later in the week against Utah. Like these games are quite important, the ones that are coming up for playoff implications. Utah is playing LA, the LA Clippers. Then they're playing Portland. Like these teams that are at the bottom of the West. We had a big game last night with Clippers versus Blazers, but a lot of what happens this week is going to be pretty important for all of these teams. Like they're all kind of playing each other right now. So yes, certainly I like Blazers to miss playoffs right now, but there's it could be way better if they lose to the Lakers tonight, which they probably will, as we'll get to, with the projected line for that game.
Gotcha. And for those looking to make actionable moves right now, so when Matt says it could be better for them to miss the playoffs, you're not going to have that same value tomorrow morning. So grab that plus 140 if you can today.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and shift to today.
I got one. I actually, we keep interrupting each other here and we keep not going forward. I actually found something actionable that I would like to talk about.
Yeah, go ahead.
What if I were to tell you, you could place a bet today and get a 10% return on investment on June 30th when the NBA draft happens by finding Victor Wembanyama at minus 1,000 odds? How interested would the two of you be in having your money held from now until June 23rd when the next NBA draft happens?
That's all it is, 10-1, because we talked about this yesterday off air, right? It's only 10-1. Yeah.
I'm checking my available cash. My available cash. I'm ready. Wembanyama will be the number 1 pick unless he loses an arm or both feet.
And that's why I bring it up. The clear downsides is you have to lay 10-1.
What book is this at?
You have to wait 7 months to get paid.
That's fine though, but what book is it at?
I found it on Bet Online.
Yeah. So they may not have that at any of the American ones, which could be an issue for people. That would be the only caveat because it's a great bet.
Yep. We'll just give a quick, not that we're proponents for Bet Online, but Mike and I both have been using them for almost 2 years now. No issues with deposits or withdrawals. I
would recommend being Bitcoin savvy to interact with this.
There's definitely some bonuses that you can take advantage of with if you're a Bitcoin only customer, particularly on Bovada, Bet Online as well. But yeah, we're no problem planting the flag now that Wembanyama at minus 10-1 is a great bet. It doesn't. You can talk to me all you want about Scoot Henderson or any of these other guys. Nobody else is going to be number 1.
Scoot Henderson is plus 1,000. The field is plus 825.
There's no one else, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good players. Like this is a deep draft. You've heard me talk about Wembanyama a lot of times on this. It's not he's the only one in the draft. He's just the only one that's going to be number 1. There's no question. He could break his foot tomorrow, and he's still going to be the number 1 pick because people will draft him and wait the year. So anyway, keep an eye on that. We are going to move to today's games.
Yes.
So let's get going.
Okay.
Get your Wembanyama bets, get your Portland miss the playoff bets, but let's talk about today. Spurs, I think, is the first game
Yep.
we want to talk about. So, Matt, what are you seeing there? What are we recommending?
So right now it looks like we've got 3 or 4 games that are just 1 unit bets. Information could change, but there's nothing like jumping off the page right now. And for the Spurs Thunder game, it actually is a no bet given the current injury news. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got downgraded to questionable yesterday for this game. And you would think this is a game that OKC would like to lose if they can.
Yes.
The Spurs are an
I immediately thought of
important
that
team
too.
in the standings for them to like. This could be the number 3 and number 4 worst record in the NBA by the end of the season, and the team that can finish behind the other will get higher probability for Wembanyama. It's kind of a good segue. I didn't realize you were going to bring that up, but it is relevant to bring him up all the time because the tanking is more of a thing this year compared to last year. So this is no bet unless Shai gets ruled out, but my lean is that he won't play. Just 60-40, 65-35. My lean is for him not to play.
So are you putting a partial unit in now, or are you waiting
Yeah.
for news?
So when
Okay.
when this news broke yesterday, San Antonio was +6. I got some in. I woke up this morning. It was 5.5 at a couple places. I got a little more. I'm still under a unit on it. The line's 5 now. There are some 4.5s, but it's mostly 5.
Okay.
It's a good bet at +5 if he's out.
Got
The
it.
fair line would
Okay.
go to even with manual adjustments. So I have a little bit of a knock on the Spurs, and I've got a bump on the Thunder.
What's interesting about your manual adjustment is that the entirety of the meat on the bone comes from your manual adjustment. So that gives me a little bit of concern.
No. The manual adjustment is going the other direction. The Thunder are getting a 2-point bump from manual adjusting. If I didn't do that, the projected line would be at 3.5 right now. Because the Thunder are getting boosted by 1.5, and the Spurs are getting knocked by 0.5 point.
All right, so it's a bet right now at +5.
Only
and then-
if Shai is out.
Okay. All right, so if you want to take the chance, maybe get a partial unit in now, but
Yeah.
as soon as you hear that news, then it's something to definitely jump on.
If you're able to wait and be ready, I do think that this is one where we're going to find out pretty early in the day. So the 1:30 to 2 o'clock window tends to be like a pretty common time for injury news to come out. I would guess in that window, we either get him ruled out or they say he's a game time decision. One or the
Yeah.
other. I think
Okay.
we'll get something. So yeah, if you can be ready between like 1 and 2, it's a pretty good bet if he's out. If he's
Got it.
playing, there's nothing to do here. But I lean towards him being out. I think it's more likely than not.
All right, what game is next on the docket? Which one you want? Which one has you think the next best value?
Maybe not next best value. I'll just go there because we already talked about it. It's just
Okay.
easy transition with Portland and the Lakers. We have a Lakers bet again for the like 5th time in their last 7 games, right? We did bet against them twice. So maybe it's
Mhm.
like there was 4 games in a row we bet on the Lakers. Then we got our massively
Anthony
undervalued
Davis
San
rolled
Antonio.
out, so then we obviously faded the Lakers in those situations.
Right, and then the game even before that, when Davis played, we got our extra value from LeBron being ruled in because he's overrated. So we had 2 of those, and the Spurs didn't cover either of them. But we're back on the Lakers now, and yeah, this is an interesting one because home court the Lakers are being given a lot for home court here. They played 2 days ago, but they didn't have to travel. Portland also doesn't have to travel because they just played the Clippers on the road. Or actually, I have that wrong. The Blazers were home against the Clippers last night.
Gotcha.
This makes actually a little more sense. I was like, why are when I first looked at this, I was a
when
little
they go
confused.
Clippers, Lakers back to back. There shouldn't be a travel adjustment there necessarily, but
Right, but you
when
get a
it's a home
back-to-back
game-
adjustment, just not a travel one.
right.
But they flew in from Portland, so
Gotcha.
we do have that. It's a normal back-to-back road back-to-back having to travel, and then
Lakers had 2 days off.
the Lakers had 2 days off, and I just want to check the minutes because the Blazers blew a pretty big lead last night. Yeah, the starters played a lot.
Yeah.
Yusuf Nurkic does not play 32 minutes every game. Simon's played
had
over
43.
Yep. And yeah, you can see why they don't want to play the bench because these guys just don't do anything. I mean, Shaden Sharp may be a great player in 3 years, but right now he's not helping them win. So yeah, I think the schedule sets up really poorly for Portland, and that's why we have Lakers value. We do have to watch,
It wouldn't
though.
shock me if anybody gets a night off here for Portland either.
That too, although the game is really important for them, so we'll see. I agree, I wouldn't be shocked, but I would guess it doesn't happen. Oh, I forgot to put this on screen. Here you go. We can see the Blazers now.
I'm going to go ahead and plant my flag on Jeremy Grant getting the night off.
I could see it, although Josh Hart did spend a portion of the second quarter in the locker room getting his ankle looked at last night.
Okay,
so
then
that could be the guy
new
too.
favorite.
Yeah, he's past Jeremy Grant with that new information.
Yes.
Okay.
I was
The flag
asleep
has
at
been
9 p.m.
unplanted.
Eastern last night.
The flag's been unplanted and moved over a little bit.
Yes.
He's slightly pivoted the flag.
The goalposts are really wide now.
Right. All right. So go back to the sheet for a second.
Yep.
So we're saying the fair line for Lakers is -8. What are you seeing that's available now?
5.5 everywhere. So,
Okay,
this is going to be one where I want to see if the line starts to budge. Like if it starts to creep up to 6 at some of the books, then I'll just grab a 5.5. If any -5s pop up, then I'll just take that.
got it.
So if you can get
Okay.
a 5, definitely now is the right time. If any Blazers get ruled out or downgraded, I think that would also be the right time to just get your Lakers bets in. But I think it's perfectly reasonable to just go with a 1-unit bet on the Lakers right now.
Great. Okay. What game you want to
I have a thought here.
Okay.
Or I have a thing that I've mentioned to you guys privately that I'd like to bring up on air. When it comes to end game fourth quarter strategy, let's call it 1 minute left. Have there been coaching adjustments in the last couple of years due to rule changes? The overall concept that I'm kind of curious by is like, I'm finding very, very, very few games that end within 1, 2, and 3 points. And my opinion is, when it's a 3-point game, there's a foul, they shoot the free throws, then the other team's taking a rush shot. There's generally like these bonus points that get added to the favorites at the end. And my eye test is saying there's a whole bunch of games that are -2 or -3, but like I feel like more often than not, even when it's an upset and the underdog has a 3-point lead late in the game, then there's still that jostling for position, trying to capture the lucky EV in the short amount of time, and that then the game still finishes at a 7-point differential when the underdog is kind of winning. So there's obviously, like, I'm talking about a broad concept here, and there's it may be difficult to respond, but like this 5.5 number is kind of the number in my mind where when it gets below that, I'm wondering, like, it goes to 6 a lot is my point.
Yeah.
No matter which team is winning.
What you're
And
basically
so-
describing is key numbers, right? Like the 3 and 7 in the
that's-
NFL.
And we've never really talked about that in basketball. In football,
Yeah.
it's obvious 3, 7, whatever. What are the key numbers in basketball?
So I've read some stuff on this, but it was a while back. But I don't think a ton has changed. Like late game fouling tendencies are probably a little different now. Like the teams will foul up by 3 more than they used to like force the team to have to shoot free throws so they can't tie the game. But other than that, I don't think a ton has changed like over the past decade. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like there hasn't been a ton of
I thought
change.
there was some rule adjustments for endgame fouling that changed a little bit. I could be way off on that.
There was a change, but I think it was long enough ago that it would have been already accounted for in any
problem.
study that was done like 5 years ago or 3
Okay.
years ago. There were changes, but they were made like 10 years ago. To like when you can intentionally foul, it's got to be under 2 minutes or whatever. Like if a player doesn't have the ball, I think that may be what you're referring to.
Okay.
But yeah, the key number thing, there are key numbers. It's just that they're not that big of a gap from each other. Like a game ending by a 3-point margin compared to a 2-point margin in the NFL is a huge difference in probability. In the NBA, there is a difference, but it's tiny. So we're talking about 0.25% and 0.5% with this stuff. So I think the point is valid. It's just not to a degree that is like relevant for us in any real way.
Fair
But
enough.
if you want to like optimize a little better, like could you argue that if a point spread, if you're laying 6.5 with a favorite, should you buy it down to 5.5, depending what price you can get? Like, there might be
That's
something.
not so much what here's what
Okay.
I'm suggesting. Actually, I want to make this actionable. What I'm actually suggesting is, I'm more a fan of instead of taking a -2, I'll just take the money line. Or I'm sorry, instead of a +2, I'll just take the money line, because I just don't see the game ending in a 1 point differential enough that I just think it's either they win the game or they don't.
I
And you
think
get a slightly
that
better
concept
price
is right. It's just I think it's accounted for in the what the money line is. Like, to put numbers on it, a team that is +1, the money line is only like -105. It's a 5 cent difference because that's so unlikely the +1 is going to be relevant. And then with the +1.5, the money line will only be like 100 or +105. With
Right.
+2, it'll be +105 or +110. Like, they're barely increasing, but then you get up to +2.5, and the money lines will go to like 120 to 125. And then by the time you're up to +3, you may even see like a +140 on the money line. So the key number thing, or specifically, games are less likely to end inside of 2.5 points. The books may not be accounting for it perfectly, but they are accounting for it to some extent. So if we're getting an edge there, it's not going to be a big one, I guess is my point. But there might
Fair
be
enough.
something. There might be something.
All right, great discussion. Also, I know I'll keep an eye on the money line prices to see if there are those that are the 1 point or 1.5 point games. If we do see a +110, +115,
Right.
+120, that's where it maybe say, okay, ooh, there is extra value here.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So yeah, for Dallas last night, there was a +110 when the point spread was only 1.5. There might have even been a 114. Like, yes, if you're getting the price higher than what you would normally expect, absolutely, I would say bet the money line instead of the spread. But
got it.
the +2 is roughly equivalent to a like +107 money line. So if you see
Okay.
+2, but you also see a +115
My
money
opinion
line,
is I would much rather bet a 107 than a +2.
in the long run, you're going to basically get the same amount of money.
Fair enough.
There's going to be that one time where the team loses by 1 every like 10 to 20 games.
Yeah, it's
that
like
will
hitting
make
the
up
zero
all
every
of the extra money that you've made by betting the money line up until that point.
There you go. Right, the 00 on roulette. All
Exactly,
right.
exactly. Yeah, that's a good analogy
We're
for it.
moving on to the next game. What next game do we want to talk about? Where are we seeing some value or potential value?
Yeah, so we have the Knicks tonight with a roughly 3-point edge. They're projected to lose by 3, and the line is about 6 right now. The Knicks are on a back-to-back, but they did not. I'm going to pull that game up. They did not have to play their starters the normal minutes last night because Julius Randle.
Yeah, Randle had a big game, and yesterday, who's better than LeBron? Favorite of Emmanuel Quickly was he had a decent game too. I would say limited minutes, but off the bench.
Yeah, 22 minutes, 15 points, 4 assists is a solid game for Quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, Julius Randle shot 6 for 13 from downtown, so.
Yeah, so he only had to play 31 minutes. Brunson played 18 minutes last night. Yeah, the back-to-back should not be such a big.
That looks more like an injury than anything to me.
I mean, they were up 70 to 56 at halftime, and then by the middle of the third quarter, they were up 97 to 67. They probably just took him out, and he also had 4 fouls.
Gotcha.
So he might have been in foul trouble while they had the 30-point lead, and then there was obviously no reason to bring him back in.
Got it. All right, so we feel good about the Knicks playing all their guys on the back-to-back.
Yes.
And we're seeing 3 points of value there.
Yeah, so the Knicks are still getting 2 points of home court advantage, which means that the back-to-back is only being mildly accounted for. Like, the Knicks would normally have 3 points of home court advantage. They're only getting dinged by
one. Road game last night. It wasn't a home game.
Yeah, they were in Detroit. So the home court being 2 instead of 3 also could have to do with like Milwaukee's recent schedule. I'm not exactly sure here. So if the Knicks had to play a tough game last night, I'd be a little reluctant with this one. But given how well rested the starters are relative to a different back-to-back, I feel pretty good here. So yeah, I think the Knicks at +6 are like a 1-unit bet.
There we go. All right, we have a rested RJ Barrett. We know how much we love RJ Barrett based on yesterday's discussion. So All right, sounds good. What else? So that one's a bet now. If you can find that
Yep.
at +6 or
I
better.
I would guess though that this line has a shot to be 6.5 at some point. Milwaukee's going to be a public bet today. Like they've played
Okay.
well recently. They've played well all season. Uh, People are not generally excited to bet on the Knicks. I would think that there's at least a decent chance Milwaukee gets some of the betting action and winds up being
Yeah,
six
we
and a
can
half.
capture some
All right.
steam here.
So is our recommendation to bet a half unit now and try to snag an extra half point later? Or do you
Potentially,
bet
I'm
the-
just checking if there are any 6.5s now. Doesn't look like it. So yeah, you could do half at +6 now, and then if you can find a 6.5, add it later, or just
Got
add your second half to the bet at +6 again later, something like that.
Tip off or whatever.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk. You want to go to Atlanta, Orlando, or Philly, Cleveland? What's next?
So yeah, there isn't really much value on either of these.
Okay. What's our next?
Actually,
game?
no, that's not true. Well, I'm
By the way, I did hear, as long as you mentioned Orlando, I did hear Mo Bamba and most improved player in the same sentence sometime in the last 36 hours. I forget where I read that.
someone
but-
must be mixing up Mo Bamba and Bol Bol because Bol
Yes,
Bol
that's
is
what I was gonna say that
Yeah.
exact thing.
Actually, it's this guy. It was Bol Bol and most improved player. So yeah, somebody got it confused. It was me. Yeah, it was Bol Bol and most improved player that I saw in
Yeah.
the same sentence.
Bol Bol is like number 5 in the race right now. I think he's nowhere near winning it, but he is like sort of in it.
He's live.
Yeah, he is live.
Okay.
I
All right,
do.
so what's our next game of discussion here?
I actually got something that I want to bring up. It's something near and dear to our heart. The Isaiah Stewart jersey above Matt's left shoulder. Isaiah Stewart shot 5 for 9 from downtown last night. This is a reoccurring theme we've gone over and over again between Mike and I, especially. I love the idea when we had a piece of detail. The coach said when Stewart and Bagley play on the court together, the only way that's going to work is if Stewart can shoot threes. It was a big, probably the reason Matt's hanging that up there behind him last year is because of that little detail. And they've been hurt a lot since that happened. So they really have barely played together. When they do play together, Stewart shoots a bunch of threes. It's something that I really, really, really think is worth keeping an eye on going forward.
I wish I had remembered that yesterday because that is true, and I didn't think of it again. And Jaden Ivey was out. It made it more likely that they were going to play a bigger lineup. But all that news happened right before tip-off. But yes, that the last time Stewart and Bagley played on the court together was probably last season. Bagley was out
There's
earlier
been like
this
2
year.
games this year where they've
Yeah.
done it, and like Bagley shot like 4 or 5 attempts at each one. I think he's only ended up making one of them, if I recall correctly. But this is an edge when you know what the coach's strategy is, and the book can't really account for it at the micro level that we're able to study it. This is a potentially giant edge if it pops back up again. I mean, obviously it's depending on prices, of course.
Yeah, just to remind people what happened last year, Isaiah Stewart was a plus 700 bet to make 1 3-pointer in a game. And
He literally he shot an average of 1 attempt per 5 games for like a giant stretch of the season. He was literally maybe like 3 for 12 on the year over like a 50-game sample. And then the coach was like, if we have these two, they traded for Bagley. And then we read that detail in a press report or whatever that if they play together, Stewart's got to start shooting more. And we were just, Matt, we had our best day of the NBA year last year off that.
He was 40 to 1 to make over 1.5, and he did it. Yeah, in the first game after they said the thing, that's why I bought the jersey.
And we missed that first. I remember it was a Sunday. I was busy, and you guys started talking about it about 5 p.m. before the 7:00 games. I missed it entirely on Sunday. Then that Monday they played back to back, and we had our biggest day of the year last year because of this.
I think even in the second game he was like a plus 250, so we did well.
It was 700 to hit 2.
Right, and he hit 2 again. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was my best 99-cent investment because I bought a 6-month subscription to the Detroit Free Herald. They still keep sending me stuff now to renew, but I went on there and did a deep dive and found an additional quote from the coach saying they wanted him to shoot. But anyway, that was last year. But this year the Stewart dynamic is there, so it's something to keep an eye on.
I don't think the books are going to price that efficiently. If that's
what's interesting, I looked at the odds last night. He was minus 200 to hit 1, but it jumped up quite a bit it was like plus 240 to plus 280 to hit 2, and it was like plus 6 something, maybe plus 700 to hit 3. So keep an eye on it. Like the to hit one, there's no value.
He's still a
But
really bad shooter, but if he's gonna shoot 9, then all those bets are
What
good.
if he shoots 6?
Yeah,
Like he's
Alright, well,
minus
yeah,
200 is probably good if he's going to shoot 6.
yeah. He should make one if he
no,
shoots 6.
He was 5 for 9 last night, so we will.
We were chasing that game all last year and this year, and there's been a few. Obviously, we've done well on them, but I just think that if they're going to play on the court together, that's an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it. I just checked, and I'm not seeing that.
I took that one. Are you?
No, I'm saying I just checked on Bovada just to see.
Oh, gotcha.
And that game doesn't have props up yet, so we will check back on that one later. Any
Are
other?
they playing today?
Oh, maybe that's why. No. Oh, I'm sorry. I was still thinking about last night's game. So,
yeah, I went back to last night's game.
Got it. All right. So, any other games with value today worth discussing?
Yeah, briefly. So I just removed the Atlanta-Orlando game because there's a manual adjustment I still need to make. What I will say for Atlanta, though, is they become a good bet potentially if Bogdanovich plays, and he was upgraded from out to doubtful yesterday. So, that's the thing.
Possible.
He's got a 50-50 shot. Yeah. Listed doubtful, but 50-50 to play. So I will readjust that and add him back in, and then anyone who uses the sheet can see it later. But essentially, Atlanta will only be a bet if Bogdanovich plays. And then we have another totally injury-dependent situation where Minnesota is a good bet only if Dillon Brooks is out. So there's no bet if he plays. It's just something to keep an eye on. They're plus 2.5 right now, and they will be projected like minus 1.5 if Brooks is out. But Jaden McDaniels is also questionable, and he could hurt them 1.5 points if he's not in. So Brooks is the more important player here. You can't really bet Minnesota unless Brooks is not playing. But the reason I didn't want to spend much time here is because I think he will play. Like Dillon Brooks, the kind of player that he is, he's just like an all-effort guy. I don't anticipate that he would miss games for like a nagging thing. Like he doesn't need to be efficient. He's never efficient anyway. He just needs to be able to defend the other team's best player. Like he just needs to be able to stop Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell, who are clearly the top scorers on the Wolves now because Karl Anthony Towns is out. So if we get Brooks not playing, though, Minnesota is a good bet. And then, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what else? Is there anything else that we want to get on the radar for folks?
Yes, and then the last one with potential value, there are some plus 4s for Philly. We've got a projected line at 1.7. I'm seeing it at WinBet has 4. I'm actually not sure if there's anywhere else that has 4, but Cleveland is going to be the public side of this game. Everyone loves Cleveland. I think no one likes the Sixers this year, and I could see the line bouncing back up to 4. Yeah, there's one person. I like the Sixers. They've been really good to us lately. We got that Embiid returning win over Atlanta. We got those 2 wins against Orlando. We're 3-0 betting Philly in their last 3 games. So I think we have a shot to make it 4-0, but at plus 3.5, it's like a half unit bet. We've got an edge of 1.8. And the reason I have Evan Mobley as the thumbnail for this episode is because his rating might actually be the reason the Cavs are overvalued. 538 has him as a -2. And if you look at his numbers this year, you've got to go into like the advanced stats from Basketball Reference or the site dunksandthrees.com, which will like chart the estimated defensive impact and offensive impact. Mobley has been mediocre on both ends of the floor this year. Last year, he was good on defense, like really good on defense, but he was mediocre on offense. Like he was basically a neutral player because his defense made up for his bad offense last season. This season, he's been bad at both. So without Jared Allen, they're playing Mobley, Robin Lopez, and without Kevin Love, like this is not a good Cavs team. So specifically with Embiid back, like who's guarding him? If Mobley's not defending well this year, and clearly like he's got the wingspan to be an elite shot blocker, but as a one-on-one defender, can he stay in front of Embiid? Like he's so small, like he's so skinny for Embiid. Allen would be a real threat. Like Jared Allen might be one of the 3 best players you could stick on Embiid and have him have a shot to defend him. Mobley is not that. Robin Lopez is certainly not that. And then whoever else they might play. Like, they don't even have any other bigs. So I think the matchup, if anything, favors Philly just like schematically. But we're showing value here regardless, even without accounting for any of that. So I like Philly as a bet.
We're recommending a full unit on that one now.
Full unit if you can get +4.
Yeah.
+4. Okay.
At 3.5, you can either bet some now or wait.
Got it. Okay. So +4 if you can get it on Philly. Probably makes sense to keep an eye on Embiid props as well. I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
I know today when the ETR projections come out.
The
see what
the other thing with this game is the Cavs are like +500 to make the play-in tournament. This is a pretty decent, like a decently important game for that. I'm going to go back to the standings. Let me see. Because we haven't really talked about them and their futures, but Cleveland is not a lock to make the top 6. I think they're more likely than not. But the thing here that people may not realize.
Price for the play-in tournament?
What's that?
What's their price for the play-in?
It's like +500, maybe a little bit higher.
That seems pretty enticing.
And just looking at the projected standings here, they're ahead of both Atlanta and Miami, but only one of those two teams can make the play-in tournament unless the Wizards win the division, because division winner will not be in the play-in.
Gotcha.
So Atlanta or Miami, I mean, I'm assuming Washington is not going to win the division.
Right.
They're just nowhere near as good. So the teams that I would say there's almost no way they're going to be in the play-in would be Boston and Milwaukee, one of Atlanta, Miami, Toronto, and then Philly, I think, which is why I'm highlighting it now, because if Philly beats Cleveland, that goes a pretty long way to solidify that Cleveland will finish behind Philly for the year. So then what we're talking about is 5-1 that Cleveland gets passed by one other team. And there's no team I would pick outright to do that, but
when there's so many contenders, one of them is going to get hot, right?
Right, and it could be Miami and Atlanta. They both could pass.
It could be Cleveland, but I don't think it is.
No, but I'm saying Miami and Atlanta can both pass Cleveland. One of them has to, but both could. Like, it doesn't have to only be one. It could be both. Or it could be the Nets, right? Like, the Nets could, with their fully healthy team, get hot at some point. Like, they're certainly live for that. The Pacers are ahead of the Cavs right now, I think, right? Unless I'm reading that wrong. 12-8. The Cavs are 13-8. The Pacers are a half game behind, so I wouldn't pick that one. But the odds are high enough that even if the Cavs only have, I don't know, what can we call it, like a 33% chance to make the play-in tournament? 30%, like that feels about right to me.
Seems good there.
Yeah, at worst, I think it's 20%. Like
my number was 40%.
Okay, I mean, at 40%, it looks really good.
Right.
At 20%, it looks kind of good. It's good either way. It's probably somewhere in that range. So I would say, as far as what's actionable, Mike, I know that's where you're going. Like, what do we bet now?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's what the people watching are very interested in this hypotheticals and great theory talk. But do we have a flag plant right now that we say, hey, if you can get it at this, it's probably worth something?
If Cleveland loses tonight, anything near 5-1, I think is great. If Cleveland wins tonight, I would hold off for now and just keep an eye on it for the next few games or a week or two. And we'll come back to it. We'll talk about this again. But if they lose to Philly tonight, I think it's a really good bet at 5-1.
Okay. Do we know how long Jared Allen is supposed to be out?
No, he's like day to day. They might have said he's out 2 more games yesterday. I'm actually not sure about that, but it's not going to be long term. He's dealing with like some back tightness. I think it's going to be a short-term injury. But every game, Kevin Love is more of a concern because he has a fracture in his hand, I think in his thumb. And Kevin Love is the best-rated front court player on the Cavs by the player ratings. It's Mitchell and Garland are the 2 best players on the team. But of all the front court guys, Kevin Love is the best. He's number 3 on the team. So they're missing Allen and Love. And Love has a fracture, so he could be out longer. We don't know though. Kind of ambiguous.
Right. As you mentioned yesterday, you get the double whammy with Jared, with Allen and Love out. Right. It's not just you lose those guys; you get more of Robin Lopez. So, not a good trade there within the Cavs.
That to say the least, it's not good when you have to play Robin Lopez. So we're gonna get. I mean, can Dean Wade guard Joel Embiid? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I mean,
Lopez
what
is
we'll
probably their
probably
best.
see is a lot of double teams and a lot of open shots for other players, and Philly's going to have to make the other guys are going to have to make the shots.
Gotcha. Another Shake Milton moment. So
Yeah,
we'll
they'll get
keep
another
an eye
chance
out
for
it.
sure.
Yep. All right. Any and again, we've got a lot that we've talked about for value now and value to keep an eye on. Matt, will you be able to recap for the worldwide audience on the Preaching Sense Twitter account what we're
Oh, yes.
saying to jump on now and what to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I'll give a little like show notes and key things to watch. Yeah,
Great.
within the next like 30 minutes, we'll have a recap up there.
Fantastic. All right. Anything else actionable for today?
I don't think so. I think a lot of what might be actionable for futures is going to come after games are played tonight. We're watching
Okay.
news for SGA. We're watching news for Dylan Brooks. That's really it as far as news. There's a couple other questionable players, but we don't really have bets for their games either way. So yeah, that's really it for now.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining the Welcome Back reunion tour for all three of us. Mike, good to see you back in the U.S. and on dry land. And keep an eye, everybody, on Preaching Sense Twitter account for what we're saying to bet now, what we're saying to keep an eye on, and we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning.